My name is Penelope Actton. I am 68 years old, and the woman my son is marrying looked me in the eye, in my own kitchen, at my own table, and said, "The wedding's small, just for people who actually matter." 5 days later, she texted me asking for $900 for the florist. I texted back 3 words. Those 3 words cost her everything. But here is what none of them knew. Every contract for that wedding was in my name. Every deposit came from my account, and the first $200, my husband put them in before he died. This is the story of a wedding I funded for 10 years and was never invited to attend. Our mothers who were underestimated tell the stories nobody expected. If you are new here, subscribe and hit that bell, because Penelope's story is one you will want to hear from beginning to end. Now, let me tell you how I got here. I started at Bradford & Associates at 28, junior accountant, corner desk, no window. I stayed for 35 years. By the end, I was senior financial controller managing portfolios worth $40 million. I never missed a decimal. I never lost a cent that was not accounted for. That is not a boast. That is a habit. I am the woman who reads every line of every bank statement. I kept personal receipts in labeled folders, sorted by year. My husband Gerald used to joke at dinner parties. "Penny can tell you what we spent on groceries in March of 1997. People laughed. Gerald was not joking. I retired 3 years ago, 65. Final year. I went home to Ridgewood, Connecticut. Ridgewood is a small, affluent suburb where everyone knows everyone and everyone talks. Colonial homes, manicured hedges, the kind of town where the grocery store doubles as a newsroom. I live in the house Gerald and I bought 31 years ago. 4 bedrooms, a garden I tend myself, a kitchen where Gerald used to make Saturday morning eggs with too much butter. I live alone now. The house is paid off, the pension is steady, the garden grows whether I am sad or not. People think I am cold. I am not cold. I am quiet. There is a difference. I show love the way I show competence, through actions, the right gift on the right day, the check that arrives on time, the deposit made without being asked. For 35 years, I tracked other people's money and protected other people's futures. I was very good at that. I was not good enough to protect my own. Gerald Actton, civil engineer, retired. Married to me for 36 years, died of pancreatic cancer 6 years ago. The diagnosis came in April. He was gone by September. 5 months. That is how long the universe gave us to say everything we had been saving for decades. In those 5 months, Gerald did 2 things that matter to this story. First, he made me promise. We were sitting on the back porch. He could barely hold his coffee. He said, "Make sure Derek has a wedding worth remembering, Penny." I said I would. He nodded. That was enough for Gerald. Second, he walked to the yellow envelope. He wrote on it in blue ink, "Derek's wedding, P&G." His handwriting was already shaking from the chemo. The letters leaned like they were tired. Gerald did not live to see Derek graduate. He did not see Derek's first real job. He never met Megan. He just knew his son would someday marry, and he wanted to be part of it. After Gerald died, I continued. Every month, $500 at first, then $600, then $800 as the pension stabilized. 10 years, 120 deposits, $68,200. I kept the yellow envelope in the second drawer of the kitchen counter, the drawer where Gerald used to keep his reading glasses. The first deposit receipt is still inside. $200, Gerald's signature. September 3rd, 11 days before he died. Gerald always said the same thing when a client's story did not match the spreadsheet. Numbers don't lie, Penny. People do. I should have listened harder. Derek met Megan 2 years after Gerald died. He was 28, still fragile from grief. He had moved to a new apartment, started a new job in software development. He was rebuilding the way young men rebuild, quickly on the outside, slowly underneath. Megan Hale was bright, organized, confident. She worked in marketing. She made Derek laugh again. I heard it through the phone one evening. His real laugh, not the polite one he had been using since the funeral. I was grateful, genuinely grateful. First dinner at my house. Megan was polite. She asked about Gerald. So subtle I almost missed it. Megan asked, "How often does Derek call you?" Not curious, measuring. I said, "Once or twice a week." She nodded slowly. That's a lot. 2 words about my son calling me twice a week. I should have heard the audit in her voice, but I was so relieved to see Derek smile that I let the discrepancy pass. That is the most expensive mistake a controller can make. Ignoring the first variance because the overall account looks healthy. Second red flag. At Derek's birthday dinner, Megan rearranged the seating so she sat between Derek and me. Not hostile, positional. She controlled the physical space the way you control access to a document. Quietly, structurally. Third. Megan told Derek one Sunday, "Your mom is so independent. She doesn't need you hovering." Framed as a compliment, functioned as permission. Permission for Derek to pull away from the woman who raised him and toward the woman who was replacing me. I cataloged each one, said nothing, waited. The campaign lasted 2 years. I call it a campaign because that is what it was. Systematic, incremental, deniable. Megan did not attack. She eroded. Year 1. Small exclusions. Derek stopped calling twice a week, then once a week, then every 10 days. Megan started answering Derek's phone when I called. "He's busy, Penelope. I'll have him call you back." He did not call back. Then the money conversation. I asked about the wedding account balance at a Sunday lunch, a question I had asked every quarter for 10 years. Megan set down her fork. Comfortable. Accountability becomes uncomfortable when someone else is spending your money. But I stopped asking. I kept depositing. Planning meetings for the wedding began. I was invited to the first 2. I brought my vendor folder both times. At the 3rd meeting, Derek texted, "Megan wants to keep it small tonight. Just her and Judith and me." I was never invited again. Megan told Derek's college friends that I had chosen to step back from wedding planning. She told the vendors that Derek's mother is elderly and prefers not to be involved. I am 68. I manage a garden, a house, and a pension portfolio. I am not elderly. I am excluded. Each lie was small. Each exclusion was deniable, but they accumulated like compound interest. And I understand compound interest better than anyone at that table. The balance was growing, not in my favor. Through all of it, I kept depositing. Every month, $800. I made a promise to Gerald. The promise did not care about Megan's campaign, so neither did I. Now, let me tell you about Judith Hale, Megan's mother, 62, retired office administrator, married to Robert Hale, 65, who's been quiet for 35 years because Judith has been loud for 35 years. Judith controlled her household the way she controlled her filing system. Everything in its place, no exceptions, no questions. She dressed above her means. Her jewelry looked expensive but was not. Her posture carried authority she had not earned. When Judith walked into my colonial in Ridgewood, she saw what she did not have. Real money, real independence, to, I noticed the venue had overcharged by $800. I mentioned it quietly. The contract says $11,200, not $12,000. The correction was accurate. It was also, for Judith, humiliating. She had approved the inflated number without checking. She'd been caught not doing the math by a woman whose career was the math. That was the moment Judith became the architect. She told Megan, if his mother comes to the wedding, she'll make it about her money. She told both families that the Hale family was covering the wedding costs. She told Megan, don't let anyone know his mother is funding this. It looks pathetic. Judith could contribute $6,000. That was her total. $6,000 and a campaign to erase the woman contributing $68,000. And the phrase, just for people who actually matter. Judith said it first, at her own kitchen table. To Megan, the wedding should be for people who actually matter. Megan absorbed it, repeated it, made it her own. But the architect was Judith, always Judith. 8 weeks before the wedding, I had not been invited to a planning meeting in 4 months. I had not received a save the date. I had not received an invitation. I told myself the obvious lies. Derek is busy. The mail is slow. The invitation is coming. I am his mother. I called Derek on a Tuesday evening, kept my voice even. Sweetheart, I haven't received my invitation yet. Should I check the mail again? Silence. Too long. The kind of silence that has a shape. Mom? Megan and I decided to, I don't know, maybe 50, 60. And I'm not one of them? More silence then. It's not like that, Mom. You'll be at the next one. We'll do something special after, just us. The next one. As if there would be a second wedding. As if the one he was planning, the one I had funded for 10 years, the one his dying father asked me to make beautiful, was a dress rehearsal for some future event that included his mother. I said goodnight. I hung up. He did not call back. I sat in the kitchen. The clock on the wall ticked the way it always ticks. Steady, indifferent, accurate. I opened the second drawer. I touched the yellow envelope. Gerald's handwriting stared up at me. Derek's wedding, P&G. I did not open it. Not yet. Maybe 50 or 60. He did not even know his own guest count. He had handed that detail to Megan. He had handed every detail to Megan. My son was marrying a woman who managed him the way Judith managed Robert, completely and without resistance. 2 days later, a Wednesday, Megan came to my house, alone, to explain. She sat at my kitchen table. The table where Gerald ate his last meal, lamb chops, mashed potatoes, the only dinner he could keep down that week. Megan did not know that. She sat there the way she sat everywhere, poised, prepared, performing. She spoke in rehearsed sentences. I could hear the practice in her pacing. Penelope, Derek, and I have been talking, and we want you to know this isn't personal. She paused, swallowed. The wedding's small, just for people who actually matter. At the table I have owned for 27 years, spoken by the woman whose wedding I had been funding for a decade with money her future husband's dying father started. I did not respond. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I nodded once. Megan took the nod as acceptance. She smiled. She stood. She left. Megan thought my silence was surrender. In 35 years of auditing, I have learned that the people who mistake quiet for weakness are always the ones who have the most to lose. I sat alone. I opened the second drawer. I took out the yellow envelope. This time, I opened it. Gerald's first deposit receipt. $200. September 3rd. His shaking signature in blue ink. And behind it, my handwritten log. every monthly deposit for 10 years, 120 entries, $500, $600, $800, month after month, $68,200. I closed the envelope, I placed it on the counter, I picked up my phone, I called the bank. That evening, kitchen table, the yellow envelope open, records spread across the surface the way I used to spread ledgers at Bradford and Associates. 35 years of muscle memory. When the world stops making sense, you go back to the numbers. The numbers always have the answer. I counted. 120 monthly deposits. Gerald's initial 200. My contributions escalating from 500 to 800 as the pension stabilized. Derek's contributions $100 to $1,200. I am the primary account holder. Gerald was co-signer, now deceased. Derek was added as an authorized user when he turned 25. Megan was added by Derek 18 months ago. The reason listed on the form, wedding planning expenses. I pulled out the vendor folder, organized by contract date, the way I organized every folder for 35 years. Venue deposit, $12,000. Contract signed by Penelope Actton. Catering deposit, $9,500. Contract signed by Penelope Actton. Photographer deposit, $4,200. Contract signed by Penelope Actton. Total in vendor deposits, $25,700. All in my name, all recoverable. I added the numbers. I circled the total with a red pen. $68,200 plus $25,700, $93,900. Controlled entirely by a woman who does not matter. I had not decided anything yet. I was gathering data. A financial controller does not act on emotion. She acts on numbers. And the numbers were about to tell a story that nobody in that wedding party wanted to hear. The numbers told their story on the third pass. That is when I found the 4 entries I did not recognize. 4 withdrawals from the joint wedding account over the past 8 months. $1,200, $1,400, $900, $1,300. Each one labeled in the bank's memo field, wedding planning. I cross-referenced with vendor invoices. I have done this 17,000 times in my career. The process, the venue, catering, and photographer deposits were handled through my personal account. The florist had not been paid yet. The DJ was paid by Derek directly from his checking account. $4,800 withdrawn for wedding planning that funded no wedding expense. I knew immediately. I have been catching embezzlement in corporate accounts for 35 years. The pattern is textbook, roundish amounts, vague descriptions, consistent timing, someone spending money they did not earn on things they do not want documented. Megan used the authorized user debit card to pay her personal credit card debt. I did not confront anyone. I printed the statements. I highlighted the 4 withdrawals in yellow marker. I filed them in a new folder. I labeled it unauthorized. I placed it behind the vendor folder in the second drawer. I was not angry. I was cataloging. The financial controller had found the discrepancy. Now she was building the case. The truth is, I had noticed the first withdrawal 3 months earlier. I saw it and waited, hoping Derek would catch it on his own, hoping Megan would correct it, hoping I would not have to be the one to say it. Nobody noticed. Nobody corrected anything. The woman who does not matter was the only one watching the money. If you've ever checked your bank statement and found someone's hand in your wallet, someone you trusted, someone you loved, stay with me, because I am a financial controller. And what I found next made the $4,800 look like pocket change. I did not call the vendors to cancel. Not yet. I called them to verify. There is a difference. Cancellation is just confirming the setup for the Acton Hale event, Dawn. Yes, Mrs. Acton. Full ballroom, 180 seated, plus cocktail hour in the garden. Everything's on track. 180. I asked him to repeat it. He did. 180 guests. My son told me 50. He was off by 130. That is not a rounding error. That is a lie. Second call. The caterer. Confirming the final head count, please. 180, Mrs. Acton. Prime rib for 120, chicken for 60, plus children's plates. 180. Again, same number, same lie. Third call. The florist. Has the final order been placed? Not yet, Mrs. Acton. We're waiting on payment for the centerpieces. Your daughter-in-law said she'd have the 900 by next week. The florist called Megan my daughter-in-law. The wedding had not happened, but Megan had already claimed the title. She had claimed everything. The family, the wedding, the guest list, everything except the bill. 180 guests. Not 50, not 60, not small, not just close friends. 180 people my son considered worth inviting to the wedding I was paying for. 180 seats at tables I had put deposits on. 180 meals I would be billed for. I hung up the phone. I sat very still. I did not open the yellow envelope this time. I did not need to. The numbers had spoken. And numbers do not lie. That night, 11 o'clock. The house was quiet. The garden was dark through the window. I sat at the kitchen table with my I found it. Derek and Megan Forever Starts Here. The website was beautiful. Professional photos of Derek and Megan, their love story in soft cursive font, the venue photos, the registry, links to gift shops and honeymoon funds, and the guest list, publicly accessible. 180 names organized by table. I read every name. Table 1, Hale family. Judith, Robert, Megan's cousins, Megan's aunts. Table 2, Megan's college friends. Tables 3 through 8, Megan's coworkers, Derek's coworkers, mutual friends. Tables 9 through 14, Derek's college friends, his gym buddies, his startup colleagues. Tables 15 through 18, extended family, Acton cousins, Gerald's sister Margaret, Gerald's brother's children, Derek's second cousin from Vermont. Every Acton relative was there. Gerald's sister who held me at the funeral and whispered, "He loved you more than anything." Derek's childhood friends, people I introduced to Derek. People who came to Gerald's funeral and held my hand and said they were sorry. 180 names. I read them twice. I read them a third time. My name was not on the list. There was no table 19. There was no mother of the groom. There was no Penelope Actton. I hit print. The seating chart filled 2 pages. I laid them on the kitchen table next to the yellow envelope. Gerald's $200 on the left. 180 names without mine on the right. The laptop glowed. The kitchen was silent. I did not cry. I counted. 11 at night. I called Tom Whitfield, tired partner, 70 years old with a mind sharper than most people's at 40. "Penny, it's late. Tom, I need you to review something." He did not ask why. In 30 years of working together, Tom has never asked me why. When I audit, I have a reason. He trusts the reason. I read him the vendor contracts. Venue, signed Penelope Actton. Deposit $12,000. Catering, signed Penelope Actton. Deposit $9,500. Photographer, signed Penelope Actton. Deposit $4,200. Every contract had my name, my signature, my bank account as the funding source. Tom's opinion was professional and precise. "You are the contracting party. You have the right to cancel and receive a refund per the cancellation terms of each agreement. Derek and Megan have no legal standing on these contracts. I asked about the joint savings account. He was equally direct. You're the primary holder. Gerald was co-signer, now deceased. You have sole authority to freeze or close the account. $68,200 in a joint account, I could freeze. $25,700 in vendor deposits I could cancel. $4,800 in documented unauthorized withdrawals, and a seating chart with 180 names that did not include mine. Tom paused before hanging up. His voice softened. Just slightly, the way it does when he stops being a lawyer and starts being a friend. Penny, you taught me about fiduciary duty. You already know the answer. Then, whatever you decide, you've earned the right to decide it. Gerald would agree. Saturday. I went to the grocery store for coffee and lemons. I was in the produce section when I heard my name. Penelope, Margaret Actton, Gerald's sister, 71 years old, same jaw as Gerald, same direct eyes. She was holding a bag of apples and smiling the way people smile when they have gossip they think is harmless. I hear the Hale family is paying for the whole thing. How generous of them. I went still. My hand stayed on the lemon. Who told you that, Margaret? Oh, Judith mentioned it at the last family gathering. She said the Hales wanted to give Derek and Megan the wedding of their dreams. She was very proud. The Hales were paying. Judith Hale told Gerald's own sister that the Hale family was funding the wedding. The wedding where every vendor contract bears the name Penelope Actton. The wedding, funded by an account Gerald started with $200 from a bank he walked to while dying, Margaret added innocently. I was surprised you're not coming, though. Judith said you'd decided not to attend, something about not wanting the stress. Not wanting the stress. They told people I chose not to come. They took away my invitation and then told everyone the absence was my decision. They stole the seat and blamed me for standing. I did not correct Margaret. I smiled. I said how nice. I bought my lemons and went home. I added Judith's lie to the file. The final piece. The architect did not just exclude me from the wedding. She erased my contribution entirely. She took credit for 10 years of my deposits and Gerald's dying wish. She stood in a room that evening. I had gathered everything. The seating chart, 180 names, no Penelope. The account statements, $4,800 in unauthorized withdrawals. The vendor contracts, all in my name. And now Judith's lie about who was paying. I did not sleep on it. I did not call Derek. I did not give anyone a chance to talk me out of it. I have spent 35 years watching people talk themselves out of the right decision because they waited one day too long. A financial controller knows when the evidence is complete, you act. I drove to the bank at 4:45 in the afternoon, 15 minutes before closing. I walked in. I asked for the branch manager. I presented my identification as primary account holder. I'd like to freeze this account, please. The branch manager was a young woman named Priya. She looked at the account balance, then at me. Ma'am, are you sure? I've been sure about this account for 10 years. I'm only unsure about the people on it. She entered the code. I signed the form. I asked for a confirmation receipt. The receipt printed with a timestamp. Account frozen per primary holder request, 4:58 p.m. $68,200. Locked. I drove home. I parked in the driveway. I sat in the car for 1 full minute. The engine ticked as it cooled. The garden was green in the late sunlight. Gerald's roses were blooming along the fence. I went inside. I made tea. I sat in Gerald's chair. I folded the freeze confirmation receipt and slipped it into the yellow envelope next to Gerald's first deposit. 5 days after People Who Actually Matter. 3 days after the account freeze. 7:43 in the morning. I was in the kitchen drinking coffee. Morning light came through the window and landed on the counter the way it does every morning. Warm, indifferent, reliable. My phone buzzed. Megan Hale. Hi, Penelope. The florist needs $900 today for the centerpiece order. Can you send it to the account? Thanks. Exclamation point. Thanks. As if nothing had happened. As if People Who Actually Matter was small talk at a garden party. As if asking the excluded mother of the groom for $900 5 days after telling her she does not matter is a normal Tuesday morning. I read the text. I drank my coffee. I looked out the window at the garden Gerald planted. The roses were open. The morning was quiet. I waited 4 hours. Not out of indecision, out of discipline. I wanted Megan to check the account at lunch, in her office, surrounded by colleagues, unable to scream. At 11:43 in the morning, I picked up my phone. I typed 3 words. Check the account. I put the phone down. I went back to the garden. I did not explain. I did not elaborate. I did not attach a screenshot or write a paragraph or add an exclamation point. 3 words. The rest Megan would discover on her own. She texted, "Thanks," with an exclamation point, as if I were a vendor, as if the woman she told does not matter could still be invoiced for services. I pulled a dead bloom from the nearest rose bush. Megan checked the account at 12:15. I know the exact time because the bank logs every access attempt. 12:15, lunch hour, her office, surrounded by colleagues. The balance showed $68,200. Status, frozen. She could see every penny. She could not touch a single one. She called the bank. The bank informed her that the account was frozen at the request of the primary holder. They could not override it. They could not discuss it further. They suggested she contact the primary holder directly. She did not contact me. She called Derek. Derek called me at 12:47. His voice was tight, confused. The voice of a man who has been woken up inside a house he thought was fireproof. "Mom, what did you do?" I was in the garden. Pruning shears in one hand, phone in the other. The roses needed deadheading. "I didn't do anything, Derek. I stopped doing." "What does that mean?" "It means the account I've been funding for 10 years, the one your father started with $200, is frozen. As the primary holder, that's my right." "Mom, the wedding is in 2 weeks." "I'm aware. You can't just—" "I can. I did. Read the account agreement. My name is the only one that matters on that document." Silence. The kind of silence that carries weight. I could hear him breathing. I could hear Megan's voice behind him. Sharp, fast, the sound of someone whose floor just disappeared. Then Derek said, "Megan is going to lose her mind. Not, 'I'm sorry,' not, 'what happened,' not, 'are you okay?' His first concern was fiancée's mood. That's between you and Megan." I hung up. I went back to the roses. He came that evening, 6:30, his car in the driveway. He walked to the door the way he used to walk to the principal's office, slow, shoulders forward, bracing. Megan wanted to come. Derek said no. "Let me talk to her first." A rare moment of independence. The first one I had witnessed in 2 years. He sat at the kitchen table. I sat across from him. Between us, 2 printed pages, the seating chart, 180 names in small font. Derek was angry at first, then confused, then something worse, frightened. A man looking at evidence he cannot argue with. Mom, this isn't fair. The wedding is... I pushed the seating chart across the table. Count them. He looked down. He started counting. His finger moved line by line, table by table. He got to 30 and looked up. What is this? The seating chart from your wedding website. 180 guests. Your college friends. Your gym friends. Your second cousin from Vermont. Your father's sister, Margaret. I paused. Everyone except me. Derek stared at the pages. His finger had stopped on table 15, Margaret Acton, Gerald's sister, the woman who held me at Gerald's funeral and whispered that he loved me more than anything. Invited. The woman who funded the funeral, the estate, the 10 years after. Not on the list. I thought Megan... He looked up. His face had changed. Not just guilt, confusion. I approved 100. Megan added 80 names he never saw. My son was not just the man who excluded me. He was also the man who did not know what his own wedding had become. You thought Megan handled it. You thought someone was handling your mother. I kept my voice level. A financial controller presenting audit findings does not raise her voice. The numbers do the raising. Nobody was handling anything, Derek. You were letting it happen. He put his head in his hands. I told her to keep it small. She didn't keep it small. She kept it without me. The seating chart sat between us. 180 names. I let Derek look at it long enough for each one to register. Then I opened the folder labeled Unauthorized. I laid the bank statements on the table. 4 withdrawals highlighted in yellow marker. $1,200, $1,400, $900, $1,300. 8 months of entries. Each one stamped with the same memo. Wedding planning. Do you recognize these transactions, Derek? He studied them. He was trying. I could see him trying. The way a student tries to pass a test he did not study for. Wedding planning. That's for the florist or the... I called every vendor. None of these amounts match any wedding expense. The florist hasn't been paid. That's why Megan texted me this morning asking for $900. The DJ was paid by you directly from your checking account. These 4 withdrawals went to Megan's personal credit card. The color left his face. Not pink, not flushed, white. The same shade I have seen on executives who discover their bookkeeper has been skimming. The face that the account your father started with $200. Yes, she told me that was for the photographer deposit. The photographer deposit was $4,200. I paid it myself from my personal account. My name is on that contract, too. The seating chart on his left, the bank statements on his right, the yellow envelope in the middle, resting where it always rests when the drawer is open, Gerald's handwriting facing up. I didn't know, Mom. I know you didn't. I kept my hands still. That's the problem, Derek. You didn't know because you stopped looking. Your father checked this account every month. If you are still here, if you have been nodding along because you have watched a son choose the wrong person, or you have seen someone steal from a dead man's promise, subscribe. Because the rehearsal dinner is coming. And what happened there? Nobody at that table will ever forget it. The next morning I woke at 6. I made coffee, French roast, Gerald's favorite. I sat at the kitchen table with my vendor folder. 3 calls, 35 minutes, the same amount of time it takes to drink a cup of coffee. 8 o'clock. I called Dawn at the venue. Dawn, I'd like to cancel my deposit and terminate the contract for the Acton Hale event. Pause. Mrs. Acton, are you sure? He processed the cancellation. $12,000 to be refunded within 10 business days. 8:20. I called the caterer. Same conversation, different voice, same pause, same question. Are you sure? I was sure. $9,500. Canceled. 8:35, the photographer, $400 in deposits, returned to Penelope Actton. I documented everything. Cancellation confirmation numbers, refund timelines, the name of every person I spoke to, the time of every call, the duration down to the minute. I filed it all in the vendor folder under a new tab I labeled Canceled. Don said something before he hung up. His voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that means a person is choosing their words. Mrs. Actton, I've been in this business 22 years. This is the first time the person paying for the wedding wasn't invited to it. I'm sorry. Even the venue manager saw what my son could not. I made a second cup of coffee. I sat in Gerald's chair. The morning light came through the window and landed on the counter where the yellow envelope rested. I sipped. The coffee was good. The house was quiet. 3 vendors had just confirmed what I already knew. The wedding those contracts belonged to did not belong to me. So I took my name off of it. Word traveled the way money does, fast when it is leaving. By noon, Judith knew. The deposits were canceled. $25,700 gone, plus the frozen account, $68,200. The wedding, 2 weeks away, had no venue, no caterer, no photographer, and no accessible cash. Judith called Robert. We need to cover this. Robert asked how much. Judith said around $30,000. Robert was quiet. That is a dangerous kind of quiet from a man who has not been quiet enough for 35 years. Judith, we have $6,000 in savings. You told everyone we were paying for this wedding. We're wardrobe purchased on credit to make it look like more. She excluded me so she could be the mother who paid for the wedding. She just forgot to have the money. Megan called Derek. Derek called me. I did not answer. I was in the garden pruning roses. The phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail. He did not leave one. Robert Hale did something that afternoon he had not done in 35 years of marriage. He pushed back. In front of Derek. In front of Megan. He said it plainly and without Judith's permission. Your mother told everyone the Hale family was covering the wedding. We can contribute $6,000. That's it. That's all we have. Megan stared at Judith. You told me you had it covered. Judith, I was going to figure it out. Figure out $30,000? The architect's blueprint had collapsed. She had drawn a building she could not fund on a foundation she did not own. I know this because Derek told me later. Every detail, every word. The night before the rehearsal dinner. 10:38. The house was dark except for the lamp next to Gerald's chair. I was sitting in it, the way I sit in it most evenings. The chair is not comfortable, but the shape of it still holds him. The yellow envelope was on the side table. The garden was black through the window. My phone rang. Derek. Please, Mom, don't do this. His voice was hoarse. He had been crying or arguing or both. I could hear Megan in the background, pacing, her heels on hardwood, the rhythm of a woman circling a room she cannot control. I'm not doing anything, Derek. You did this when you let someone tell me. Mom, I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. I've loved you for 32 years. That's why I saved $68,200 for your wedding. That's why your father put in the first $200 while he was dying. I paused, not for effect, for breath. Love isn't the problem, Derek. Respect is. He didn't speak. I could hear him trying to. I could hear the words building and collapsing in his throat the way they used to when he was a boy trying to explain a broken window or a bad grade. Some sounds never change. From behind him, Megan's voice sharp and rising. What did she say? What did she say? I did not wait for Derek to answer. I said goodnight. I hung up. I turned off the lamp. I went to bed. I pulled the covers up to my chin in a house I have slept in alone for 6 years. I slept better than I had in months. Friday evening. The rehearsal dinner was at an upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Ridgewood. White linen tablecloths, bread baskets, wine glasses catching the overhead light. 42 people seated at a long table that stretched nearly the full length of the private dining room. Hale family on one side, Acton family on the other, bridal parties scattered between them like punctuation. I was not invited. Tom Whitfield drove me. He parked the car in the lot behind the restaurant. He came around and opened my door. Tom has opened doors for me since 1989. He does not do it because he thinks I cannot open them myself. He does it because Gerald asked him to, the last time they played golf. Ready, Penny? I've been ready since September 3rd. Reading glasses in my pocket, the yellow envelope in my handbag, no drama, no grand entrance. I appeared at the edge of the dining room the way a line item appears on a ledger nobody audited. Quietly, factually, impossible to ignore once noticed. Derek saw me first. He froze with a water glass halfway to his mouth. Megan saw me second. She grabbed Derek's arm. Judith saw me third. She leaned toward Robert and whispered something. Robert did not respond. There was no place set for me. There was no chair. Tom walked to the bar area. He brought back a chair. He placed it at the end of the long table. Nobody objected. Nobody knew how. I sat down. Tom sat beside me. I placed my handbag on my lap. I did not order a drink. I did not explain why I was there. I waited. I am very good at waiting. I have been doing it for 10 years. 40 minutes in. Conversation had settled into the strained rhythm of people pretending everything was normal. Judith was speaking loudly about centerpiece arrangements. Megan was performing happiness the way she performs everything. Polished, rehearsed, 1 degree too bright. Derek was drinking his second glass of wine and not looking at the end of the table where his mother sat in a borrowed chair. Then Derek's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. Dawn, the venue manager. Derek moved to stand, to step away. Megan grabbed his sleeve. Just answer it here. It's probably a confirmation. She did not know. She could not have known. Derek answered. The restaurant was quiet enough, the particular hush of a large group between courses, that Dawn's voice carried. 12th, Mrs. Penelope Actton, the contract holder, has terminated the agreement and requested a full refund of the $12,000 deposit. I need verbal confirmation from you that you're aware of the cancellation. The table went silent. 42 people. Forks suspended. Conversations abandoned mid-syllable. Dawn's voice hanging in the air like a balance that would not reconcile. Derek looked at me. I looked at my hands. Judith spoke first. What cancellation? What is he talking about? Then Megan. Derek, what is going on? Then Margaret Acton from the middle of the table, Gerald's jaw on a woman's face. Penelope, you canceled the venue. Dawn's voice again, steady, doing his job. Ma'am, I also have cancellation confirmations from the caterer and the photographer. Shall I confirm those with Mr. Acton as well? The dominoes fell. In a quiet restaurant, over white linen, in front of every person who had been told I chose not to come. Megan stood. Her chair scraped against the floor. A sharp sound in a silent room. Her face was the color of the wine she had been drinking, and her voice was the opposite of everything she had rehearsed. She's ruining our wedding, she pointed at me. Her fingers shook. She's doing this on purpose to humiliate us. Judith, from across the table, right on cue. The architect defending her design. I told you she'd do something like this. I told you she'd use her money to control everything. The room murmured. 42 people watching 2 women scream at a third who had not opened her mouth. I sat still, hands in my lap. I did not raise my voice. I did not say something. Derek opened his mouth, closed it. He looked at me, calm, seated, hands folded in a borrowed chair with no place setting, and then at Megan, standing, screaming, pointing. The contrast was not something I orchestrated. It simply was. Judith turned to Robert. Tell them we offered to pay." Robert stared at the table. He had been staring at tables for 35 years. This time he looked up. "Judith, we offered 6,000. That's all we have." Judith's face crumbled. Not slowly, all at once. The way a building falls when you pull the foundation out. A cousin on Derek's side, someone I had not seen since Gerald's funeral, leaned to the person beside her and whispered, "Wait, Penelope was paying for all of this?" The whisper traveled down the table, name by name, chair by chair. The truth moving the way money moves through an account, one entry at a time, until the whole ledger tells the story. The room was in pieces. Megan pacing behind her chair, Judith deflecting. This is not the time. This is not the place. Derek frozen, his hands flat on the table, staring at nothing. 42 people murmuring. The bread baskets untouched, the wine going warm. I opened my handbag. I took out the yellow envelope. I placed it on the white linen tablecloth. The room quieted. Something about the gesture, deliberate, unhurried, final, commanded attention, the way numbers command attention when they do not add up. People stopped talking. People looked. Gerald's handwriting faced upward. Derek's wedding. P and G. Blue ink. Shaky letters. The handwriting of a man whose body was failing, but whose promise was not. I spoke. My voice was steady. Not loud, just clear. The same voice I used for 35 years of quarterly reviews. The voice that says, "Here are the findings. Your father put in the first $200. I opened the envelope. I took out the original deposit receipt. Gerald's signature. September 3rd, 11 days before he died. He wanted you to have a beautiful wedding. He didn't want you to have it without me. I took out the deposit log, 120 entries, 10 years, $68,200 every month, my handwriting below Gerald's, entry after entry after entry, every month, for 10 years, through his death and my grief and your silence, every month. I took out the highlighted bank statements, 4 withdrawals, yellow marker on white paper. And this is what Megan took, not for the wedding, for her credit card. $4,800 from an account started by a dying man. I took out the printed seating chart, 2 pages, 180 names. 180 guests. I counted 3 times. My name is not on this list. I set my phone on the table, screen up next to the envelope and the seating chart. Megan's text from 5 days ago. "Hi, Penelope. The florist needs $900 today for the centerpiece order. Can you send it to the account? Thanks." Days after. People who actually matter. His face broke the way faces break when the math finally adds up and the total is worse than you thought. I placed everything on the table, side by side, the deposit receipt, the log, the statements, the seating chart, the phone. 10 years of love, 2 years of betrayal, documented. The room was silent, not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that has a pulse. Derek's chin trembled. Megan opened her mouth and nothing came out. Judith stared at the table as if she could disappear into it. Margaret Acton, Gerald's sister, put her hand over her mouth. She picked up the deposit receipt. She read the date. Her voice broke when she whispered it. That was 11 days before Gerald died. The entire table heard. I stood. I did not rush. I buttoned my jacket. I picked up my handbag. I left the documents on the table. The deposit receipt, the log, the statements, the seating chart. They belong to the record now. Every auditor knows. Once the findings are presented, they belong to the room. I spoke one last time. The same measured voice, the same steady hands. I'm not canceling your wedding, Derek. I'm canceling my part in it. Every dollar, every contract, every deposit. They were mine to give. I paused, and they're mine to take back. I looked at Megan. She had stopped pacing. She stood behind her chair, gripping the back of it, her knuckles white against the dark wood. You wanted a wedding for people who actually matter. Now you know who actually paid for it. They all know who didn't. I turned. I walked toward the door, my heels on the restaurant floor, steady, even. The same pace I used leaving boardrooms after presenting findings that nobody wanted to hear. Tom Whitfield stood. He pulled on his coat. He followed me to the door and held it open. He has held doors for me since 1989. He held this one the way he held all the others, without ceremony, without hesitation, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to hold a door for a woman who had just leveled a room with a yellow envelope and 10 years of receipts. I walked through without looking back. Behind me, in a restaurant full of bread baskets and white linen and the evidence of a mother's love laid out between the wine glasses, I heard Derek say quietly, to no one in particular, "She saved for 10 years. It was not an apology, but it was the first true thing he had said in months. The evening air was cool. I breathed it in. The wedding was postponed. 3 months. In Ridgewood, that is not a delay. It is a headline. No venue, no caterer, no photographer, and no cash. The wedding that 180 people expected to attend did not exist anymore. It had been built on contracts signed by a woman who was told she did not matter. When she took her name off those contracts, the structure collapsed. Megan's $4,800 became known. Derek demanded an explanation. Megan admitted the credit card debt. Not gracefully, not voluntarily, but the way people admit things when the bank statements are on the table and the yellow peaks. Judith and Robert had the biggest fight of their 35-year marriage. Robert said what he had been holding for decades. You excluded a grieving widow from her son's wedding and stole credit for her money. I'm not going to be quiet about this anymore. Margaret called me the next morning. I should have told you, Penelope. I saw the guest list months ago. Your name wasn't on it. I didn't say anything. I'm sorry. You're not the one who owes me an apology, Margaret, but thank you for making it. 3 weeks later, a Saturday afternoon, early August light through the kitchen window, heavy and warm, the kind of light that makes old houses look the way they felt when everyone was still alive. Derek's car in the driveway. He came to the door, alone, no Megan, no phone in his hand. He knocked, though he has a key. The knock meant something. He sat at the kitchen table, Gerald's chair, the one on the left closest to the stove, where Gerald sat every Saturday morning with his eggs and his newspaper and too much butter. Derek did not know it was Gerald's chair. He had never paid attention to where his father sat, but I knew. He spoke, not Megan's words, not hedging, not corporate passive voice wrapped around an excuse. His own words, broken and plain. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I let her decide you didn't matter. I'm sorry I didn't check the account. I'm sorry I didn't check on you. He did not cry. He sat with the weight of every word. He was 32, but right then he looked 10. A boy sitting in his father's chair of paper. Not a text, not an email. Written by hand, the way Gerald used to leave notes in my work binder. He placed it on the table the way Gerald used to place receipts, flat, squared to the edge, both hands pressing it down. The note said, "I don't want to be the man who forgot what his parents built." I reached across the table and put my hand on his. I did not say it was okay. It was not okay, not yet. "I hear you, Derek. I believe you mean it." I spoke clearly, the way I have always spoken when a statement needs to be entered into the record exactly once. "I love you, Derek. I will always love you. But I will never again fund a life that doesn't include me." He nodded. He did not argue. He did not negotiate. He nodded the way a man nods when he knows the terms are fair and the audit is final. We sat in silence. The kitchen clock ticked. The garden was green through the window, still holding the last warmth of the season. The yellow envelope was back in its drawer. The second drawer, next to where Gerald kept his reading glasses. It would stay there. The silence was not empty. It was full. Two people who had found the bottom and were deciding whether to build again. It was enough. For now, it was enough. Some mothers fight. Some mothers scream. I just stopped paying for my own exclusion. 10 years of deposits. 1 frozen account. 3 words on a phone screen, and a rehearsal dinner that 42 people will talk about for the rest of their lives. Gerald always told me, numbers do not lie. He was right. The number that mattered most was the one that was not on the seating chart, mine. That is my story. 10 years of deposits, 1 frozen account, and a rehearsal dinner nobody will forget. If this story reminded you of your own worth, hold on to that feeling. Subscribe, drop a comment, and I will see you in the next one.